My name is Jessica. So together with my colleague Prima, we'll share with you, basically give you an idea what team-based learning is all about and in terms of its implementation. So I'm one of the TBL facilitator for the LKCMedicine preclinical teaching. So at the same time, I'm also in charge of preparing our faculty for teaching in large group setting.
Hi, my name is Prayman. I'm a senior lecturer here, responsible for faculty development and team-based learning. Jessica and I have worked together in LKCMedicine and before for many years. Right. Should we do a quick round of introductions?
Yes, I mean, since it's a small group, I guess we can afford to hear from everyone.
Yeah. So maybe just a quick introduction, name, what do you want to get out of this workshop?
Hi, I'm Genevieve Chase. I work for Healthcare 21, a medical education company, and we focus a lot on CME and CPD initiatives. Didactic lectures don't work in our settings in large symposia anymore. We don't get as good retention, and so we're trying to find different ways of helping people learn better, and it's certainly for our physicians for their CME requirements. So I'm here today to try and get a few more insights on how I can improve all the standalone meetings that I run.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm Dr. Erwin Montiveros from Davao, Philippines. I'm connected with the medical education unit, and we want to learn more about TBL.
Okay.
I'm Amy Britannia. I'm from Davao Medical School Foundation. So I'm also part of the medical education unit, and we wanted to improve our sort of hybrid TBL sessions in our school.
We had some visitors from Davao Medical School recently, a couple of months ago. Yeah.
Every year we had a year.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay.
Hi, I'm Chin Ye, first year medical student from LKC School of Medicine. I think it would be interesting to hear a bit about behind the scene of what's going on in TBL.
I'm Gerald, first year medical student.
Thank you.
So I'm Marcus, I'm also a first year medical student in LKC.
I'm Aaron, yeah, I'm also first year.
I'm Jimmy here. I'm from NTU, researchers in this workplace safety and health. I want to learn the team-based learning the most. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jojo Hoxon. I'm a member of the faculty of the Ateneo School of Medicine, also in the Philippines. TBL is something which we've been transitioning into since a year ago, so I'm here to just learn more about it.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Paul Helliwell. I'm from Brunel University in London, where I'm Dean of the College of Health and Life Sciences. We're setting up a medical school in September 2021, will be our first intake. We've been over here a couple of times to see TBL in action with Prima, so it's been terrific. But we're also building a new learning and teaching centre in the university, and team-based learning will be at the heart of what we do in there. And so I was particularly interested in doing it on a large scale, because we'll have perhaps up to 300 students in a class that we want to teach using team-based learning.
Su Yin Lim, internal medicine lecturer from Taylor's University in Malaysia, and we do a lot of PBL and case-based learning in our curriculum. I'd like to see if we can integrate TBL into what we do.
So, thank you. I mean, it's quite an interesting group, and there's quite a lot of experience in this group. I mean, there are obviously students who have experienced team-based learning. There are many people who have tried team-based learning. Some have done form-based learning, etc. We'll shift accordingly, I think. So what we really wanted to achieve with this workshop, we didn't know what the audience was coming in with. We wanted to touch on some of the basic principles of team-based learning, but we also have time for an application exercise where we can get into more of really what it takes to implement it, what are some of the learning that, over the last 5 years or so that we've done, right? What we've changed, and this gives you insight for the students as well, because you're here in year one, you didn't know how the sausage was made a few years ago, and maybe you shouldn't know how the sausage was made. But we're flexible in that way, right, to address some of the concerns.
Yeah. So actually, essentially, this workshop, we are actually taking a few of the workshops that we conduct for our own faculty, kind of took some of the key highlights and made it into this very condensed 1.5-hour workshop. So essentially, when we have new faculty or new facilitators coming in, we'll actually give them time to get used to the pedagogy that we're using over here. So we give them an introduction to what team-based learning is all about, how to write good application exercise questions, and how to facilitate the sessions. So basically you will have a chance to go through some of this, and then as what Prima mentioned, we will end with looking at the implementation at a large scale. Okay? So prior to this workshop, usually we'll give the participants some pre-workshop readings. You know, team-based learning, you come to class prepared. Because it's a workshop in a conference, we didn't get an opportunity to do that. So instead of having some pre-workshop readings, Prima is going to put you through a very short didactic lecture.
I hate giving lectures. But
okay, so bear with him.
Okay. Oh, that's next slide, Ismail. Okay. I'm a bit out of practice giving lectures, so you need to bear me. So I'm going to tell you guys a story. Why we decided on team-based learning. Okay. So when we were first starting this medical school back in 2011, 2012, right? We were actually considering a few different things. We were considering problem-based learning. We were considering team-based learning. We were considering some form of interactive learning. But we knew that we wanted to scale up. At that time, we didn't know what the numbers would be. Right? Anything, we knew it would be between 150, perhaps even 300. We didn't have any rooms in place, etc. So some of the things we really thought about were problem-based learning, team-based learning, etc. But we didn't want to do lectures. The first question we asked ourselves is really, we had students in class, we had engaged faculty, what is the best use of class time, right? And the first question we had asked is, why not lecture? Because lecturing, as we know, is predominantly the default mode which most universities go to. And because we are a new school, we could ask ourselves these questions. Why not just have a lecture? Lecturers seem to enjoy it. There's actually a lot of evidence that we shouldn't, right? We were trying to avoid this, right? This is what we expect, engaged lecturer, students seem quite engaged. You don't know what's on their screens, but they look engaged. Probably a graduate seminar, right? Sorry, that's my bias. But again, trying to avoid this. Because over the years, if you look at the evidence on lecturing is good for a few things. It's good for inspiring people, right? But it doesn't always, it's not always good for communicating knowledge, right? It may create the impression, among some students that they've learned a lot, but the retention rate is really very low, right? If you interrupt them, this one study looked at, 70% of retention the first 10 minutes after you heard the information, and you retain 20% in the last 10 minutes of that lecture, right? And it drops. Attention span doesn't stay constant throughout a lecture. In a 1 hour lecture, it varies, it drops 10 or 30 minutes into the lecture, so you all know, you drift off and things like that. And because we're forcing people to learn in a certain way. So the first thing we said, okay, we didn't want to give a lecture, we wanted people to learn on their own. Because people learn more effectively, digest information in different ways. So we said, flip the classroom, right? And essentially, what was the flipped classroom? And this is the first point we had. We just said we will give them homework, they'll come to class and they'll do something active. Right? And this opened it up to a lot of things. There are many things you could do. You could give people homework in the form of reading material, you could give people homework in the form of video recorded lectures, etc. But it didn't really specify what we did in class. Right? We felt that we would cover the same content. We wouldn't compromise on class time, but what they do in class would be more interactive and they'd have the opportunity to clarify their doubts and be more efficient use of the teacher's time. So at this point, we hadn't looked at team-based learning yet. Right? Essentially, this is what we said. We would get them to do all the remembering, understanding at home, and in class, we will focus on the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So then we decided, after looking at a few different approaches, right, on team-based learning. Okay, so what is team-based learning? Team-based learning is really a standard format for flipping the classroom. It was developed in the 1970s by Larry Michelson, and he developed it. His story for developing is quite interesting. He had a small lecture group, right? And his lecture group was about 30 or 40. And then there was a recession. And what happens in a recession is that a whole lot of people suddenly go to university at the same time. And him being a junior faculty member was suddenly stuck on a lecture class, a much bigger lecture class, and he wanted to do something interactive. So he said, I can't do my interactive things in this large group. I'm going to give them stuff to read before they come to class. When they come to class, I'm going to give them activities. That evolved into that him first giving them a test, right? And then grading the test, and after giving them a test, and then getting them to the test in a group, and then finally doing more activities in the form of application exercise. Okay? it is now very popular in health sciences and medical education. Okay, so I'll show you how we're showing the video first, or we're showing this? We show the video first, okay? So I'm going to show you that's a very quick overview of how we got to where we got, right? We can answer a bit more questions later about why we didn't choose TBL or why we didn't choose case-based teaching. But after many years, this is the point of evolution we're at in terms of LKCMedicine. It is quite large scale, as you can see in the room, right? We have specially built facilities, specially built e-learning, and the other thing I'll point out is you see more than one teacher. You'll see content experts who are clinicians, sometimes basic scientists, and you also see TBL facilitators, whose role it is to pace the session, direct questions to students, etc. And we'll talk a little bit about justification for that later on. But let's just watch the video.
Hi, you are about to watch a team-based learning video. My name is Dr. Preman Rajalingam, and I am the lead for team-based learning facilitation here at LKCMedicine. In each session, there is a team-based learning facilitator and content experts who are the faculty who run the sessions. Team-based learning is a sequence of in-class activities designed to engage students in meaningful learning. Team-based learning begins with students preparing for class by going through TBL preparation materials. Learning outcomes are provided for each topic to indicate what students are expected to learn from the material. The first activity in class is an individual readiness assurance process. This is an MCQ test where students are tested on their understanding of concepts which are reviewed before class. Students review concepts before class on video animated PowerPoints, textbook materials, or recorded lectures. In this scene, you see students engaged answering these MCQ questions. It is very much like a test and is conducted under test conditions. Students will not know if they've got the right or wrong answer, but in a minute, they will do the same test in their teams as part of the readiness assurance process. And at this point, they'll be given immediate feedback on whether they've got the right or wrong answer. You will see the class go from pin drop silence to an active discussion. Student teams have a discussion, commit to an answer, and electronically receive immediate feedback on whether they've got the answer right or wrong. This drives the discussion and makes sure that students justify their answers to each other before committing. Often in the team, someone is able to explain what the right answer is to his teammates. Answers which students still are unable to get right may be raised at the class level and discussed with the entire class. We call this the burning questions.
Whereas for E, it's like completely no argument for if it's a very, very high risk and they actually endanger themselves, then they may put issue.
As you can see, students are actively engaged throughout the whole process instead of passively sitting and receiving information. In the discussion, students challenge each other's answers and peer teach. The content expert is then able to correct any misconceptions which arose and clarify any tricky issues. The purpose of the IRA, TIRA and burning question discussion is to make sure that students understand key concepts, key basic concepts which they can then apply in a realistic setting. This process also prepares them for the application exercise which happens later on in the day. During the application exercise, students are presented with case studies or vignettes that reflect the significant real-world problems faced by professionals in the field. They are often presented with real test results, scans, and even simulated patients that make the cases more authentic. Early exposure in the first and second year to these kinds of problems allows students the opportunity to start to think and act like future doctors. Doing this in the classroom setting allows them to make mistakes and learn from them.
I think first we start to work on the pedagogy will be somehow on traditional Chinese medicine and also not really evidence-based medicine.
Just like in the hospital, students work in teams to apply their knowledge and propose specific solutions to the problems. The clock counts down as they discuss, look up resources, and try to find the best possible solution to each of the questions posed to them. Each team makes a specific choice, then simultaneously reports their answers. They discuss the answers with each other, especially answers which may be different, and try to convince each other that each have chosen the best solution. Often, students come up with brilliant justifications. The content expert can then finally come in and clarify any issues as well as highlight gaps in students' knowledge. This active, engaged process allows students to engage in a deep, meaningful discussion with content experts and each other. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have any questions about team-based learning, please contact us.
Okay, that's kind of an overview of where we are and a very formalized team-based learning process. So what's on the screen now is a little bit more detail of that process.
UCLGM School of Medicine has ambitious goals to redefine medicine and transform health.
Okay. Maybe we go back a slide. So we as our students know, we start with prep, right? And one of the important things is that, can we go back one slide? Okay. One of the important things is that the prep takes 4 to 6 hours, and we know that from the survey that we have our students. But you all are given how many hours of prep? 3, right? Yeah. 3 hours of prep time, because life is tough, right? But it's important that we put in that protected time for each of the TBL. In terms of the curriculum, if you don't put it in, it gets cannibalized by other things, and it doesn't indicate that students are supposed to prepare. The readiness assurance phase can take anything from sometimes less than an hour up to 2.5 hours. And that's the IRAD, the DRAT, and the burning questions. The burning questions is consistent with the principles of TBL, but it's perhaps somewhat modified for LKC. A lot of people, what they do is they will do a appeal session there. Because we're doing a very large group, right? The burning questions allows teams to submit their answers online, and their questions online, and these questions then get abstracted and then discussed at the class level. Because when experimenting with the appeals process, it was a bit unwieldy to do the appeals at that point in a large group. But we still wanted an opportunity for students to formally ask questions towards a large classroom discussion. And then finally, the final phase is the application exercise, which is again 2 to 3.5 hours. And throughout, the students are in teams of 6, and importantly, the teams stay together for the whole year. So that's the team-based learning process, specific to LKC Medicine in a nutshell.
Alright, so I hope you have been paying attention to what Preman has got to say. In order to run like a successful team-based learning session, it's also essential not just to have all the setup in place, but to also make sure that you design effective team application exercise questions. So there are certain principles that we follow when it comes to designing all these questions. So we actually call them the 4S principles. So it's by Larry Michelson. So we're going to very quickly run through the 4S principle. First one, significant issue. So the questions that you are writing, the assignments that you are designing need to involve issues that are significant to the students. So you realize that I bold and highlighted the word students. Because as content expert, the tendency is to decide on what is significant to you as an expert and put it out there. But if you're unable to pitch it to the students and allow them to see the relevance and significance of it in how they will be able to apply that knowledge, then it's not going to be something which will intrigue them or trigger them to really want to work on it. Okay? So this is the first S. Second, it needs to be the same problem. You might be wondering, what's the big deal? Very often in some of the different teaching and learning approaches, there's a tendency to do this divide and conquer. So team 1 work on question 1, team 2 work on question 2. Later we'll all discuss a different portion. But the issue with that is when team 1 is discussing and looking at the first segment, the other teams would not find that they would be as engaged. There's very low and poor opportunity to critique because they haven't been working on the same issue. So if all the teams are working on the same problem, then the chances of them and the likelihood of them critiquing is a lot higher, and that's really what we want to come out of the discussion. Third C, simultaneous reporting. So I'm not sure whether you saw in the video, a lot of them have these colored cards on the table. That's really to facilitate simultaneous reporting. So what we want them to do is come to a team decision and report it as a class simultaneously. So you will have an opportunity to kind of do that as we proceed with the workshop. Lastly, specific choice. The groups need to use the concepts they have learned in the pre-readings or through the discussion to come to a decision on the questions or tasks given to them. So they need to make a specific choice, and it usually arises in the way they report their answers at the end of the AE. Okay? Even though very often we use single best answers, in the form of multiple choice questions, there are actually various formats that you can adopt as well. Any question at this point in time?
Okay,
no?
So we've got through the didactic part. So again, we usually don't do this. We usually have videos. We have all of this recorded face to screen, which we send out to participants, and we do it in a much longer way. The advantage of sending out videos is you can, if your videos are good, you can send out longer videos, right? And you can get into a lot more detail. But for this workshop, we just kind of covered the didactics, and hopefully we don't have to talk too much anymore, right, Jess?
Yes, okay. So what's going to happen next? Can one of the students tell me? What happens after listening to Dr. Primo and myself talk, for a few slides? What do you think will happen next?
Individual test.
Yes, individual test. Okay, good job. So I have with me the test questions. Everyone grab a copy, please, including the students.
I love the enthusiasm when they say that.
Okay, so if you need writing tools, let me know. So what's going to happen in this individual readiness assurance? It's, as the name speaks for itself, individual test, closed book, no reference to any material. Try not to discuss with your team members as well. It's an individual work. Okay? There's only 8 questions, and I'll give you 5 minutes. I'm sure you'll be done before that. So what's going to happen now is that we're going to go through another segment, and it's the team readiness assurance. So what it means is you're going to take a look at the same set of questions, but this time around as a team. So within your team, you need to appoint a leader, hopefully somebody not too impulsive, somebody that will consult the rest before they scratch off one of these scratchy cards. So I'm passing one to each table. So it's something like the scratchy lottery card. What you need to do is discuss each question and corresponding to each of the role on the scratchy card, decide what is the best answer. If you think, let's say A is the best answer, scratch off the box A for the first row. If you see a star, means that you've gotten the right answer, congratulations. You get the full marks, 4 marks if you get it right at the first attempt. If you need 2 attempts to get it right, then you get half the marks. What I mean by that is, if you don't see the star, you can discuss again. Think what could be the next best answer and choose that. Of course, the temptation is to scratch off all the 4 boxes and see where the stars are, but that means that you get 0 marks for that. So really discuss carefully before you scratch off the boxes. I'll give you ample time to discuss all the 8 questions. You can get started. Alright, so you all had an opportunity to do the individual quiz, had the chance to discuss with your peers the same questions, and at this point in time, probably you have some burning questions. So as what Prima mentioned earlier, in our TBL sessions, we allocate time for students to ask questions regarding perhaps the pre-class readings of the lectures. Maybe it's not similar to what they have researched upon online. It could be with regard to the ARA questions. They are not sure why we decided the answer as such. So it's an opportunity for you to raise some burning questions for me, and we will take some time to discuss. Okay? So at this point in time, anybody have a burning question regarding any of this? Yes?
How do we assign points?
How do we assign points? Okay, so the students might not be aware, but back end we do award points for every questions that they have in the same manner. I think we use 4 points as well. As to why 4, do you know why 4?
No, we just said 4 is a multiplier, because the end of it is normalized, right?
Yeah.
That's 4. But we started, okay, again, this is historical artifact. We set 4 points, because when we started our MCQs, we had 4-item MCQs. So we had 4 points.
Yeah. Just
There are many decisions which are sad to say, perhaps not as evidence-based as they should be. Right? We started with 4 points, and then after we went down to 2 points because we want to make a big distinction, 1 point, etc. Since that question is asked, I'll share an interesting anecdote. I don't know whether students are aware of this, but this is for you all of you all thinking of implementing this as well. In the early days, the first year and a half, 15% of the GPA came from TBL. Alright? 15%. So right now, you know, it's just purely formative. It comes from the exam. So the performance, the score actually kind of matter a lot more. Right? Both on the individual level, the team level, and the application exercise. And it was, if I remember correctly, 5% individual, 3.5% TIRA, and another 5% application, and the remaining 1.5% was peer evaluation, which we felt was the, and the peer evaluation was done in an interesting way. It was not that they gave each other scores, but more like if everyone participated meaningfully in the peer evaluation and gave good feedback, they would get 1.5%. We did it for the first year and a half, and then we stopped. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. See whether you ask any questions about that.
So who decides the assignment of points? The faculty or the faculty? So they try to meet and discuss.
Others have actually done it in consultation with students as well. I've known people who have got together with the student union and say, how many points should we assign?
Yeah. Any other questions?
I've got one on
Yes.
question 8.
Question.
We all came up with the same answer, which was incorrect.
Okay.
And so we can see that the role of the faculty is to, like if you say, I don't like this, I'm not sure about this question, or there's a gap, I'm asking a question of the faculty can challenge you and say, well, why are you doing that? So I understand why A would be a good answer.
Yeah.
But isn't the role of D also for them to fill in some of those gaps, maybe not necessarily all the gaps in the knowledge, but is that part of their role as well?
Yeah, that's part of the role, but that will come through from questioning the students with regard to what they already know and trying to surface out the gaps. Of course, the reason why this is not the best answer is all the gaps.
Right.
So some faculty feel that it's their role to surface all the gaps and get everything addressed, but classroom time is limited and precious, so you might want to prioritize and determine what you want to spend your time on with regard to which issue, etc. So the word is like all the gaps. So at the same time, you realize that why B wouldn't be the best answer, even though we do want to explain and clarify some of the key concepts, but not all, not every, and certainly not during class time. So prior to class, there is pre-class readings and voice-over PowerPoint. That would be the opportunity to explain the key concepts. But sometimes faculty might feel anxious. I'm not sure whether the students heard me. I'm not sure whether they understood. So they come to class and they feel the temptation to explain everything again. Yeah, so that's really not the key.
So one of the challenges that facilitators like Jessica and I have is that sometimes the faculty member is very anxious and very well-meaning, but may want to clarify all the gaps of a student, right? And you guys have seen it sometimes, right? One student is dominating and one conversation is going on, and there's a lot of time spent on a particular issue. But one of the things you need to think about is the whole class, right? So you can't close every single gap of all of the students. There needs to be a judgment at some point where these are the meaningful gaps which everyone kind of shares and you'll address them, but avoid getting to a situation where you're going down a route where, of course, it's driven by individual student interest or team interest, but it may be somewhat outside the curriculum or of interest to that student. So that's, again, is a bit of a judgment by the faculty in the session, especially a large session.
Yes.
How to group them? I mean, maybe some their standard is that they have the background knowledge before they come to study. So, I mean, there is some shortcoming if you form a team with one guy is really outpace the other team member. And how to solve this problem?
Maybe I have a student. What are your thoughts? You guys are the ones in the team. You're on different teams. What are your thoughts about this?
So I understand, especially the LKS based on our school. So, because we come from different schools, right? So they don't want us like to be in teams of all from the same previous school. So I think that's one of the considerations. Second is also gender. They don't all guys or all girls in the team. And I think in terms of knowledge, right, I think we all hit the minimum baseline. So I don't think there's one whereby anyone is so slow, anyone is too fast. So I think it's fine for knowledge. So I think how they do is in terms of like demographics, like in NTU. That's what I understand.
Yeah. So for year ones, what we did was the most important thing was whether you've done bio or physics. That was the first criteria. It's not all the students have done bio or physics. So in terms of knowledge, right, the starting point is, I'm not saying, in terms of ability, probably I agree, or all your math threshold and beyond the threshold, so they can cope with the course. But some may not have, some may struggle a little bit with the first block because they don't have bio. Right? So we make sure that's broken up so that they have a greater opportunity to learn from others. Right? And in the team, they will see, I think the Introduction to Medical Sciences block is actually a good example of where there's some people who are much more familiar with the content and some who are quite novice to the content. And you will see that's a good opportunity for those who think they know the content to slow down and teach it to those who don't. Those who don't actually then ask relevant questions, etc. And it is good to have that diversity. You do need to perhaps look out for the individual person who just doesn't want to participate, but you flag that up both from the team comments and from the peer evaluation. The peer evaluation and from even the hierarchy of performance, you can pick that up sometimes.
Following on from that, I work with a lot of specialists who have a God complex. And so when I get them together in a group, I've had one senior guy in China once go, but this is the problem with these workshops is they just give the wrong answer and they think that they're right, but the answer is this. And we all know is not the case. And so I want to ask the group, in your experience and students as well, how do you overcome situations like that where someone is super adamant that they're correct, or cultural differences within a group dynamic?
For our students, right, like we are students, so I don't think, there are a lot of times like there are points where we think that we are really right, but that's where the content experts step in, because they are the content experts, they know the thing better than we do. So we'll try to argue them, try to explain our rationale and find resources to back us up, but ultimately they'll explain their rationale. So generally we tend to reach consensus.
I'll tell you from the other side, facilitator side. Sometimes it's the other way as well. Sometimes the students actually bring up a good point and the content experts don't know. Right? And you don't know, sometimes they don't know, right? It's the nature of university teaching and learning. The better, more prepared content experts will admit that they don't know and kind of say, oh, this is what I know, this is what I don't know. Some will get a bit defensive because they come from that same pool. I think those who teach generally don't have the God complex, but they get a bit uncomfortable about being challenged. So from the teaching team perspective, we need to kind of say, look, it's all right to say you don't know. It's all right to say, I don't think so, I disagree. It's all right for students to disagree with you. I don't have a clear answer of how you deal with that situation, but team-based learning is also about forming a culture. So there's the culture of the teams, where they can challenge each other, but it's also the culture of the teaching team and the culture of how they respond to student challenges. If someone's going to go in and say, I'm right because I'm right and because I know this and because I'm experienced, then that shuts down the whole conversation. And my opinion is the students are quite astute actually. They kind of know, okay, actually we shouldn't push this issue, but we're not happy with the answer. And they leave it. I don't know, that's my take from the other side. What's your opinion?
Sometimes we know that at the end of the day, we know that we are right because of semantics, but then they believe in something different, and there's no, you see a discussion is going nowhere, we want to go home, so we just end the discussion. You so mentally take note, as long as you get the main concept right, then some of the details are not worth arguing about.
And I feel that sometimes, for some of the team-based learning questions, the way that it's phrased is very important, the way that you interpret the questions. And sometimes we interpret it differently from what the content experts who said they intended it. So, but I think it's important to realize that the learning is the one that's crucial here. So you just understand the take-home message and ensure that you get the concepts right. Then I think the phrasing can come another day. Like when you're preparing for exams, then you try to interpret the phrasing correctly.
Any other questions that you'd like to clarify?
I think this one is more of formative learning, So how do they proceed with that summative?
They do an exam.
Yeah, pure pen and paper, MCQs.
In year 1, it's just a written exam. In year 2, they start doing an OSCE and an exam, and that continues after they graduate.
So how do they distribute the weights?
OSCE and exam?
Like this TBL, then
currently it's 100% exam. Yeah, so the exam is the pure summative. The TBL is done formatively. But TBL is a good, actually we've done some studies, we look at your performance on the IRA portion of TBL, because any individual portion tracks well with the performance of the exam. But that, y'all shouldn't be too surprised by that. It just means that those of y'all who prepare continuously throughout the year and seem to answer the questions seem to do better. Okay, it's not absolute correlation, but stress.
do students feel that incentive for enthusiastic participation in that formative part?
I don't know if you ask students. What do you think?
Yeah, I think in general we still do, because we know that there are still some knowledge that we need to bring home to this, and which will aid us later on in something. So although this is all formative, we don't have people like totally just disconnecting themselves, because we all recognize that this part is still important, although it's formative for them.
So a student does not care if he has poor scores in TBL as long as he will pass in the summative part.
I think if he has continuous poor scores, we monitor and they get called up for tea.
Any other questions? Burning questions that you like to ask?
I think for our team, like regarding question 4, so we can understand why, like for example, like facilitators intervention would not be a good answer, because I think it's quite hard to pinpoint for like different facilitators. But we're wondering why that the immediate feedback from ERA would actually affect it this way, because like for example, if your dominating teammate is the one that's always getting right, then it wouldn't really mitigate, because he'll be getting the answers all the time, and it will only add on to his like superiority complex.
Okay, so yes, we have decided the best answer is immediate feedback. Of course, you know, if you are very dominating team members, and when you share a response, the immediate feedback shows that you are wrong, it helps to manage the team discussion. Your question is, what if this dominating team member is right all the time? So we actually put the students in the same team for the entire academic year. So it means that they go through different system blocks in the same team. What we have also found is, even though a dominating team member might be right for the entire block, it's unlikely that he is right for the whole year. So when it comes to another system block, it could be another students that fare a lot better. Of course, ideally this doesn't happen, but we're looking at developing self-managing teams. So even though the other options are viable methods to mitigate such a situation, but if you want to develop students' ability to manage this situation themselves, we are using the immediate feedback as a mechanism in place. So it's not 100% foolproof, okay, but there will be other mechanisms that can help mitigate this as well. But as a first step, it is the immediate feedback that helps to, you know, manage this.
I think another way of thinking about it is, if you remove the immediate feedback, it's going to be a lot worse. You can have A, C, D. You can have lots of A, C, and D, right? But it's not going to do as much to help the teams develop to self-manage teams as D. D is probably, in my opinion, the most critical aspect.
And when it comes to scaling up, having this is actually a very important component. So unlikely you will be able to have facilitators at every table to manage the team discussion. So having this immediate feedback allows you to upskill and be able to manage, like, you know, 200-300 students a lot more effectively, I would say. Okay, if there are no more burning questions, we're going to move on to the next segment, which is a lot more exciting because you get to use the colored cards on your table. Okay, so we're going to look at application exercises.
We may have to go quickly. We have about 20 minutes, but we'll see what we have time for.
Okay.
Okay, so first one, okay? Let's say you're running a new year 1 TBL course. Many of the students come from a non-TBL environment, and you know, you're trying to implement TBL short of time maybe. You need to remove a component of TBL. which component, when removed, would most adversely affect collaborative learning? Okay.
Discussion every day.
The individual and the team. So okay, think of an answer for yourself, and after that you can discuss as a team, come to consensus.
Okay, so I hope you're ready. 3, 2, 1, answer. Okay, we have A and we have B. Alright, let's hear from this group. Why A?
Well, it was in our discussion, we realized if we remove pre-class preparation,
yes,
we will essentially have teams which don't have a knowledge base to discuss anything when it comes to coming up with the answer. So right there, it ends the concept of TBL because no one came prepared, no one read up. So that's how we looked at the answer. And that's why we chose, you cannot remove pre-class preparation. You're most adversely affected if you remove pre-class preparation.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from this team. Why B?
Well, I'll just address the pre-class preparation. We decided not to do that, not to include that because, you know, if I haven't prepared anything before class, my teammates may have, and so I'm not adversely affected by not doing that pre-class preparation as much as you know, some of the other things. But also during the team-based exercise, you can do lots of Google searching and whatever. So if you haven't done your pre-class preparation, you can still do a bit of that during the team exercises. We chose B because just running through all the exercises that we've done today, that initial, you know, the individual assessment and then the team assessment, that really forms a critical part of the team-based learning and interactions with each other. We thought C was also helpful, which is what we're doing now, the application, but if you haven't done the debate kind of before in B, then you know, C doesn't work. So we think B is the most critical.
Any response to that before we share, Jessica, what we think is the best answer? They thought, look, even if you don't have the knowledge, you can Google it in the session. Other people seem to know something.
Well, for us, as in, so for B and C, they are both collaborative learning in the sense that there's open discussion within the team. So it's kind of a redundancy. So honestly, you can remove either one. But if you remove pre-class learning as the main one, like for the teammate that doesn't do the preparation, he actually does no learning because without a baseline, you cannot add on to it. So even if they do have a discussion, he wouldn't benefit. So if you take that out entirely, and if nobody does preparation, there'll just be collaboration but no learning.
Okay. Response?
I think it's a bit about how you define what is pre-class preparation. Is it the students go without any preparation, or is there no structured preparation provided for students? Because if you have if you have the readiness assessment, you have the individual readiness assessment, even if you don't give them any formal resources to study, and they will still have the motivation to study because there's the individual component that will encourage them to learn and have the knowledge base. So it depends on how you look at it. If there is, it means there's zero knowledge before going to class, right? Then I'll agree with your stand. So I think it's a semantics problem. So can you refer to the
semantics problem. Psychotic semantics problem. One of the principles that we have in education is that there is no blank slate. No one starts from a complete blank slate. Even when you do the pre-class preparation, right, you may notice that people emphasize different things in their mind, understand different things, and they come to the session with different knowledge. We agree that if the task is so advanced that no one has any knowledge, they can't get into it, the whole thing's not going to work. But often you'll see that the different individuals in the group actually know something about the topic, and they know different things about the topic even when we've done the pre-class. And today's example as well, I mean, of course, we didn't give you pre-class material to prepare, but you all come with your own experience about different situations which are transferring to this situation. So even though it is not ideal not to have pre-class preparation, you can still manage to learn something to the rest of the process. That's an argument why pre-class facilitation isn't the most adversely, won't most adversely affect the rest. You want to know what our answer is?
This team got our
answer is B. Right? And I'll share you the rationale. I think it's a good point to say that in the team application and readiness assurance, it's both collaborative learning as a process. But one of the things you need to learn, the team assurance process is very scaffolded. You do individually, you get feedback, and you discuss as a team. So other than helping you learn content, one of the secondary benefits of that is it scaffolds the team into becoming a better team. Right? So you do this over and over again. You start off, hey, okay, you know, now we're more comfortable talking with each other. Now we've got a bit more feedback. Okay, we know that, okay, don't be so confident, you know, or you were right, you should speak out a bit more. You do this more and more, you get to know each other. And the other thing about application exercise is always pay attention to the context. Right? We said this is a year 1 group. They have no experience, they don't know each other. So in this situation, helping them become teams is very important. Right? If they were perhaps a more experienced group, you could do away with that a little bit. Right? So that's our rationale for B. But for all application exercises, feel free to challenge us. The main thing is to focus not on the semantics, but on the concept. Yeah.
Question 2.
Okay, just before I do that, if I were to change one word, right, and say I change the sentence to which of these would most contribute to deep learning? Just quickly, what do you all think?
Which component will contribute the most to deep learning?
Deep learning.
C. Application.
C. The application exercise.
C.
Yeah. So that's generally accepted. But in order to do C meaningfully, right, first you need to cover the knowledge, work well as a team, and then apply it together as a team. And that doesn't come automatically. If it did, then we just start off with application exercises, which we don't. Okay, this is something which you guys have to think about. So let's say now you are implementing team-based learning in your course, and you can choose more than one answer, right? But which would most hinder implementation of team-based learning in your school or center or learning context? So share a little bit with each other, and then share with us, and then we will share perhaps some strategies. We don't have a lot of time, so perhaps this is the last or second last application we'll go through, but it'll give us a chance to talk about some strategies for implementing team-based learning.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Think about it.
Okay, so a quick one. So tell us what are your major things which would hinder implementation. Consensus. Faculty attitudes. Okay, so it's very
blaming you guys.
Very interesting. So what's the, and it's interesting that we have consensus here because we can share some stories as well. So why did you all say that?
If you don't have buy-in from the faculty, it's just not going to work.
Is buy-in a problem in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I gave an example of my clients, like my faculty, and they hate this idea of team-based learning, interactive workshops. They're all like, no. We all in medical education are all like, we have to do it, because we see the difference in the interactions. We don't see this from the lectures. We see people actually engage in dynamic and talking to each other, but my clients are really afraid of that.
Okay, so one reason is they're afraid, but what could they be afraid of?
If I think one particular example, she was like, my God complex doctors, there's no way that they would get up and do this. We can't ask them to do that because they're too high ranking. We can't treat them like students. But it's not. It was you can't think of it like treating them like students. It's more putting them in a place where they can teach each other and they all have a chance to speak up and have their position felt. Yeah.
Some of them actually find it quite, especially those who haven't been teaching in an interactive way, quite intimidating to be put on the spot, right? In our faculty development, it's an issue which always comes up, and particularly the burning questions which we do. Faculty's heart rate monitor, the heart rate will go up with the burning questions. Then it will come down a little bit at the other points, right? So one of the reasons faculty may have bad attitudes is they are a little bit uncomfortable with being put in a situation where they will be asked questions which they have not prepared for as compared to a lecture, right? And I think that's one of the things that needs to be addressed through faculty development and through having them understand that they don't really have to answer every single question. They can admit what they need to focus on. They are the expert in the room, right? But the expertise doesn't come across as in the ability to answer every question. I want to hear from this group. Is there any other reasons you say faculty attitudes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the actual implementation. So it's as you said, there are some more traditional academics, teachers who prefer or who are sort of more used to the old school style of teaching, and as you say, may find this sense of interactive teaching a very new concept and difficult to get used to. And the idea of making all these preparations might be a bit off-putting to the lecturer, and then the idea of student challenging the lecturers or challenging other students, it may seem quite, the idea of it may seem quite chaotic and sort of disorganized compared to the normal lectures. So I think that the idea of it is off-putting if you've not actually experienced a session or been part of a session before. So that sort of initial barrier might be off-putting. So it's this sort of pre-formed mindset that is the barrier, I think, to a lot of current faculty.
And I think it's about change. You know, my experience, people don't want to change the way they teach. Now, interestingly, we've tried some TBL sessions, not in medicine because we're not doing it yet, but for example in computer science. Actually the faculty have now used it, don't want to go back to the old way of teaching, which is very interesting.
I mean, we'll share some stories from when we started off as well. We were very fortunate with our faculty because we actually got very senior faculty members to teach, principally clinicians, but they were self-selected and we started from scratch. So one of the things that helped the faculty attitudes is because we were building a new curriculum. Have you all heard of the suitcase curriculum? So essentially suitcase curriculum, if someone's been lecturing for a long time, comes out with a suitcase, this is my curriculum. So we didn't have that, right? We had to build it from scratch. So when you build something from scratch, then people have to really think about why am I teaching this, why am I teaching it in a certain way, etc. So because we went through this process with some very senior faculty who are now teaching or who are very into TBL, it also lended itself to, I'm going to teach in a new way, my attitudes have changed. But there were other very senior people who came in who were quite skeptical, and rightfully so, and actually have changed their minds completely. And one of my reflections on the skepticism by many of, let's say, senior scientists, right? They're very evidence-based when it comes to their work, but not a lot of them have looked at the evidence in medical education. So if you present them the evidence in medical education and show them that there's evidence in medical education and give them the experience of saying, look, this is how it feels like, this interaction, show them student feedback, the immediate responses from the students, generally most of them who are scientifically minded change their mind. It's just they do seem to have a bit of a blind spot when it comes to evidence around education. They're kind of conservative because this is how I've done it, this is what I know works. The other side of it is really, I don't think you can have some, it's very hard to pull someone into class and say teach in this way. You need to really get them started with the curriculum and other. The other problem we have now, interestingly, is some of our strongest advocates for team-based learning are our senior faculty who were involved from the start, who were involved in the curriculum design. Some of the people who are struggling with it are the faculty who have come in recently because they're inheriting someone else's curriculum. So that's something worth thinking about in terms of addressing the attitudes as well. It is not just convincing them that the way of teaching is good, they need to get really involved in the designing of the material to understand how it works for them. So I think that's important. But you know, this faculty attitudes always comes out as the main feature in all our workshops and things like that. It's such a stumbling block. It's rarely the students. It's rarely abilities, right? Though some of the evidence shows something interesting among students. The evidence on team-based learning shows that overwhelmingly, you do team-based learning, you'll do better in the exams, but the attitudes among students are mixed. Some like it, some don't like it. So it's very contextual factors. which makes them like it or don't like it. So for those who are implementing it, it's worth watching why students like it or don't like it, even though it benefits them. Yeah. So
last minute.
Yeah, we have 1 minute, so I'll go for one more quick application exercise, then we are done, and we'll have to skip the rest. So since we're talking about, oops. This, okay. So, since it's about large-scale implementation, right, and we don't have to resolve this, but really, as we spoke about throughout, the large-scale implementation is really enhanced by 3 aspects, right? As you will see in the second keynote, we have been a very large learning studio, and these spaces have evolved over the years to really support team-based learning. Down to the very small table that you have, it's meant to be small so that people can sit comfortably across the table. The mics in the table, the room, the circular design, everything. So on a large scale, the physical design really starts to matter. If you're doing it on a small scale, I think you can do it in almost any space. But if you're going up to a few hundred, think about the design of that space. The other thing is the e-learning ecosystem. We have Ernie here, and Ernie is from LAMS, and LAMS is the system that we use quite a bit in the class. Our students are very familiar with LAMS, right? So in class, we very much use LAMS to support from start to finish the whole of TBL, right? And that's a seamless experience for students. For faculty, what's very important is in a large class, it gives you real-time feedback from everyone. Okay? It abstracts that feedback. If you have 30 teams, for example, you need a way to take the performance of the IRA, the burning questions, and display them to you instantaneously. You need to be able to analyze it after the fact, etc. And the last thing that we think is very important is on a large scale, involving a lot of faculty members, you need to think about teaching in teams. You need to have dedicated team-based learning facilitators who work with content experts, especially in a medical school where people don't teach that often. They come in for a few sessions a year. They need to be comfortable teaching in that way, and they need to be helped with the pedagogical skills necessary to run a large class. That's one thing we've discovered quite a bit. So in terms of your faculty development, you may want to have specialists in both areas. Okay, so the last question that really, we won't have time to really discuss as a group, but think about these 3 factors and what can be transferred to your learning context. We have a paper out in Medical Teacher, and it's called Implementing Team-Based Learning on a Large Scale. Right? If you drop me an email, I'll have to happy to send it to you, and it covers some detail, not great of these 3 factors as well. And really, these are things we've learned over the years about what we need to think about on a large scale, but also, importantly, the core principles of team-based learning that we talked about, scaffolding the team, having good material, all these need to be there before you're thinking about expanding to a much larger scale. So we're just over time, right? Jessica, any final words? No? So if you have any questions, we're happy to hang around for a bit for any questions. We have some booklets we're handing out, which just some glossy booklets about what team-based learning looks like at LKCMedicine. And hope it was a useful session. Yeah, and happy to answer any questions by email or right now if you have any. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.